And welcome back. I've been out for a couple of months now, almost, and I was very busy. I was on leave first, then I had weddings, I had pregnancy shooting, I had portrait shooting, I got destroyed my drone filming a mountain bike event. So I got a lot of stuff to do and I had to fix a lot of stuff here. I swapped my studio setup. Let me know in the comments below if you like it. But now I'm back. And since I'm back, I want to start my new season here on this channel with my predictions and hopes, my wish list for what the X-Pro4 is going to need to be. Because if you follow Fuji, you know that they have updated already the GFX line with the new GFX 102. The X line has been updated with the XH2, XH2S, XT5, XS20, and if you leave the smaller camera behind, meaning the XT30 Mark II and the E4, the only important camera that needs to be updated is the X-Pro line. And with the X-Pro line, assuming that we're still gonna call it like that, but keep that thought in mind, we're gonna talk about it later, I expect the X-Pro line to be the camera that shows the most updates compared to the previous version. I don't see the XT40 whenever that comes out or XE5 whenever that comes out to be dramatically groundbreaking or anything like that. They're going to be updates, they're going to be good cameras for sure, but they're not going to be something that changes the what the X line is. While I expect the X-Pro4 to fit that bill. And in this video, we're going to discuss what I think Fuji should do, what I hope Fuji will do with that camera, because despite the fact that I love my XH2 and my XH2S, and despite the fact that if you follow this channel, you know I'm been using the Ricoh, you see here, GR3X lately a lot, I feel the need for a Fuji camera with a more classical design for my personal use, because as much as I love those cameras, especially the XH2 and the XH2S, they are workhorse. They are not, I'm gonna say, fun camera to use. And if you've used Fujifilm cameras before, you know what I'm talking about. So I have a couple of thoughts that may make you angry. So brace yourself and bear with me in this video, because I'm gonna tell you what I want this camera to be in the near future. So when it comes to sensor and processor, this is where I expect basically no surprises. I'm 99.9% sure that they're gonna use the 40 megapixel sensor that you see in the XT5 with the same sensor. I believe that there's no other way Fuji can make this camera. Now, consider all of that is based on my expectation, is not any rumors. When it comes to rumors, you gotta watch Patrick's channel, Fuji Rumors channel, and look at his website, because that's the only trusted sources for rumors when it comes to Fujifilm. So go watch that. All what I'm saying is my assumption, my expectation, my wish list. I just want this to be clear before we go any further. I'm pretty sure that they're gonna add the Reala Ace that they just released with the GFX line. I'm pretty sure that any new camera from now on, especially the top of the line, is gonna have that. And other than that, I don't expect any weird thing happening with the electronic of this camera. And this is because I believe that being the X-Pro4 or whatever the name is gonna be, the photographer's camera in the X line from Fujifilm, the 40 megapixel sensor is the one that makes most sense among all the others. I don't see them using the stacked sensor from the XH2S, because that sensor is best suited for a true hybrid camera, while this one is mainly going to be, we know it's going to have video, but it's going to be mainly the photographer's camera in the Fujifilm lineup. So that sensor makes the most sense among them all. Now, when it comes to body design and controls, I'm sure some of you are gonna be willing to kill me for what I'm about to say. And what it is that? It is that I believe it's time for Fuji to say goodbye to their hybrid viewfinder. And before you kill me, before you roast me in the comments below, let me tell you that I am a hybrid viewfinder, a native hybrid viewfinder user. My first Fuji camera was the X100, the first model, and then the X-Pro4 that I used for 5 or 6 years. So I know exactly what that combination can do. I know why I love that when I was using it, but also it's been 10 years since that concept, which is great on paper, but from a usability standpoint, we've already seen that with the X-Pro4, they kind of reduced the pro features in that hybrid part with the lack of the sliding magnification glass that would change and will let you use different focal lengths and adapt to it. Again, it's a part that can break. I understand that. I fully understand that. But at that point, with the quality that viewfinders have gotten today, I believe that it makes no sense to keep insisting with that technology. I believe that a viewfinder that is on par with that of the X-H2 or the X-H2S, or if Fuji wants to knock the competition out of the park, a better viewfinder, a 9 point whatever million dots viewfinder, something like the GFX does, well, that makes a lot more sense. And in that case, the camera can also be called an XE Pro more than an X Pro with the death of the classical X-Pro line. I know this is controversial. Some of you are gonna be killing me. Some of you are gonna be agreeing with me. And Fuji went with a bold move with the X-Pro4 with their screen, and we're gonna talk about the screen in a moment. I believe they should try to go bold again and try to see if the market is ready for this kind of new approach to the camera. The choice of a camera like that, so with only electronic viewfinder, would also leave room for a super compact, super lightweight XE5 without a viewfinder. Something that could compete in size, I don't know weight, but size at least with the Ricoh GR3 and GR3X. It's gonna be bigger. If they ever do it, it's still gonna be bigger. But it would leave room for that, because at that point, the rangefinder style camera with the electronic viewfinder is gonna be the X-Pro4 or XE-Pro1, whatever you're gonna call it. And the XE5 is gonna be the super compact camera that is gonna make everyone's life super easy. Again, it's a lot of assumption, it's a lot of stuff that should go in a specific place for that to make sense, but that's my wish list, that's what I hope to see from Fuji, and I believe there's a market for both cameras. While I believe that the market for a hybrid viewfinder camera has shrunk a lot, and so probably Fuji should anticipate the wave and move forward. Moving on from the viewfinder, the next big thing is going to be the screen. Now, we all know how controversial the X-Pro4 screen was, and I'm 99.9% sure that that kind of concept is going to be gone with the next camera. Because at the end of the day, it's a design risk that probably didn't pay off that much. I know some people love it, and I understand that. But Fuji has to sell the camera to as many people as they can. So the niche of those people that like that, it's very minimal compared to the potential market. Like, I wouldn't buy it if it kept that screen. That's like for me. So what I expect, I would love to see the Sony A7R5 solution, which I like to remind to everybody, Fuji had before anybody else, if I'm not wrong, The XT100 had a beautiful solution which was probably not as sturdy as the A7R5. We're talking about $700 camera compared to a $4,000 camera. But Fuji had that concept, and I still don't understand why they moved away from it, because it was super, super, super intelligent. So I hope that to be back with the X-Pro4. But if I'm being realistic, a solution something like the XT5 is most likely to happen with the X-Pro4. I expect that type of screen from the A7R5 or the XT100 to be the next thing on the XH line whenever they launch the XH3 or whatever. Anyways, finger crossed, maybe they surprise me and they give us that solution, because that solution would make sense for a camera like that for two reasons. One, it will give you the maximum flexibility. Although I understand from a looks standpoint, it's probably not as clean as other solutions. And also, if you're the type of person that doesn't want to chimp at your screen every time you take a picture, with a flippy screen that allows you to flip like that, you can close the screen and basically have the same solution that you have with the X-Pro3, but in a more comfortable, more convenient way. So to me, it would make a lot of sense. And by moving away from the viewfinder, from the hybrid viewfinder, there's money and room left behind for this kind of improvement. Moving on from the screen, next thing, they have to find a way to squeeze the new battery in, the NPW235. I don't see any professional camera in the Fujifilm lineup to be equipped with the old NP126 anymore. If anything, probably a super compact XE5 could still use that, although I think that for Fujifilm it would make more sense to find a way to have all the camera use the same battery, but dimensions are dimensions. So but I definitely expect the X-Pro4 to be equipped with the NPW235 battery. The other thing that I think it's gonna need to happen, the X-Pro4 or whatever it's gonna be called, is gonna need to have IBIS. It's gonna need to be the first X-Pro line, X-Pro camera that has IBIS. They squeeze the IBIS in very small cameras such as the XS10 and XS20. They need to find a way to squeeze that in with the X-Pro4. I don't expect this camera to be without IBIS. I don't think any new camera from Fujifilm should be without IBIS unless they go for a super cheap, super compact solution like the potential XE5 that I mentioned before. I definitely want the autofocus joystick, and I also want them to keep the D-pad, because a camera like the X-Pro4 is a photographer's camera, and most of the time I define the way I set my XH with these combination of buttons that I have here, which allows me to do everything that I want with autofocus settings, and this one to set the focus, to me is super convenient and super simple to use. So I would love to see that in the X-Pro4, although I don't know whether they're gonna do it or not. Of course, the camera is gonna be weather sealed. I don't expect the camera not to be that. It would make no sense. Of course, they're gonna keep the tactile dials, such as shutter and ISO. I also expect the front and rear dial, the one that here in the XH2 are not clickable, I expect them to be clickable. I think this is still a huge mistake from Fujifilm. Fix that in the XH3. Fix that in any other camera. Don't do that again, Fuji. Don't do that again. From a media storage standpoint, I expect the usual UHS-2 double SD card slot. I don't expect them using the compact flash type B, the CF Express type B. It would make no sense for a camera like this, at least in my opinion. And of course, I expect the same sturdy construction that the X-Pro line has always had. I fell over the X-Pro1 a long time ago. It was 10 years ago. Yeah, 10 years ago, I fell on it. It just got scratched, but it didn't break a sweat. And I did not expect it. It was a really, really bad fall. So I know those cameras are sturdy and I want them to keep that. And I have no reason to think that they won't do it. When it comes to features and software upgrades, this is where I expect some dedicated functions that Fuji, I believe, has to develop and start adding to their cameras, especially their photography-oriented cameras. I expect that a camera like that is going to have the 40 megapixel sensor needs to have, especially for the type of camera that it is, needs to have an electronic zoom that allows you to crop in, something like the Leica Q3 does. Now, that is a 60 megapixel camera, so you probably can crop a lot more. So I don't expect the same range, but I expect the possibility to crop in so that if I go with one lens, in this case, if you look at this, this is the 16 f2.8. I'm going to review that in another video. But if you go with this, but you need to crop in a little bit, you can do it taking advantage of the higher megapixel count. I also expect, finally, the possibility of choosing for smaller raw files with less megapixels as well as JPEGs. That is important, I think. 40 megapixels start to become a lot when it comes to processing and storing files. So I expect those functions that are available in the Leica Q3 to be, and also in other cameras, to be available for the X-Pro4. I would love to see a function that is basically based on a hyperfocal. The ideal thing would be something you just push a button and the camera goes to something you probably have set before, and it goes to determined focusing distance and a determined aperture, and so you don't have to think about it. The best thing would be an AI function where the camera does that automatically, knowing what focal length you have. It decides automatically what the hyperfocal setting would be. So combining shutter speed, focusing distance, and aperture, that would be ideal, but that probably a little bit too much. Or something like what the GR3 does, which is like the snap focus solution where you just click without waiting for the autofocus and it goes to a determined focusing distance and it shoots like that. I believe this function is a lot easier with a super small, super compact fixed focal length camera like the Ricoh GR. So I don't know how doable that is on an X-Pro camera that may have to deal with a 56-1.2, may have to deal with a 90 f2. So I understand it's complicated, but I would love to see something hyperfocal oriented for a camera like this. I believe this would make photographers' life, street photographer mainly, super easy, and it would be a great attraction to that model of camera from now on. As I expect the camera to be equipped with IBIS, I'm sure that if it has IBIS, it's going to have the pixel shift that the X-T5 has. However, what I would love to see, Fuji dipping their toes into using the pixel shift technology on the fly without combining the files afterwards on the computer. That means allowing me to shoot without a tripod, just handheld, like Olympus and Panasonic do, I believe, and combining that in camera. Now, of course, the current solution allows you to go for 160 megapixel. I expect that if anything like that is going to be available, it's not going to go that high. It's probably going to go to 80, 100 megapixel, no more than that. But that would be enough. That would be a first step in the right direction, because pixel shift is great, but for now it's also complicated to take advantage of, because you really need to use it for basically just product photography. There's nothing more that you can do with the pixel shift technology. I don't care much about video with this camera unless they go with the flip screen. In that case, it would make a little bit more sense. But what I expect to see is basically the same capabilities as the X-T5 has, maybe save for the open gate. So I expect the 4K 30 for sure, maybe the 4K 60 with the crop. I expect those to be like a given nowadays with all these top-of-the-line cameras. But I don't expect super video-oriented features, as this camera is still going to be the photographer's camera in the Fujifilm lineup. I also expect to take what the XS20 has, which is the vlogging setup and the auto subject selection tied to the vlogging setup. I expect those to be available, especially like the vlog only if it's got the flip screen. If it doesn't have a flip screen, it makes no sense. But what I need the most, what I want the most, is an auto subject detection that you can select. Like everyone says that the XS20 does it great. I haven't tried that camera. I would love to, but I haven't. And so if it works great, just give us the option to use it. So in conclusion, I know this video has caused some of you a heart attack and some of you the decision to leave my channel, and I understand it, but I still firmly believe it's time for Fuji to move on from the electronic viewfinder, from the hybrid viewfinder, apologies. And as I said before, I'm waiting. I want to buy this camera. If it's got those things, I want to buy this camera because I need a tactile camera that I can use my day-to-day thing without bringing the XH2 and the XH2S. Great workhorses, great cameras, but an X-Pro4 is going to be way more inspiring than those two. And I know it makes no sense to some extent, but it does. At least it does for me. I believe a camera like the one that I described is going to get Fujifilm users an incredibly powerful camera with a lot of functions that are needed and are key to make this camera work the way we want in a relatively affordable, we're going to get to the price in a second, but in a relatively affordable way. For what I can see, the upcoming X-Pro4 has to compete with a much more improved competition. Sony just launched the A7C Mark II. Nikon just launched the ZF. There's a lot of full-frame cameras around the $2,000 price range that are becoming compelling. So what Fuji needs to do is setting themselves apart from the competition. And so everybody is willing to deal with electronic viewfinder nowadays. It's difficult to hear someone say, no, I'm sticking with DSLR because I want the optical viewfinder. It's not happening anymore. So moving away from that decision, giving us a big, bright, beautiful EVF, giving us a 40 megapixel camera is going to give us something that for a bit less than those full-frame cameras is going to get the user a much better experience. That's the way Fuji can keep users in the classic niche camera market. If they go with something meh when it comes to both the viewfinder and the megapixel count, the other two solutions are going to become much more compelling for random users, because at the end of the day, if I get decent viewfinder but no more than that, if I get similar megapixel count, why would I choose a Fuji now that I have something like the Nikon ZF or the A7C II? So Fuji has to find a way to make it work the way I'm thinking this camera has to be. Otherwise, I don't see a bright future for the X-Pro line. Actually, I don't see a future for the X-Pro line. And so, to me, a camera like the one that I described has to be, it's not going to be cheaper than the X-T5, for sure. And it cannot be more expensive than the X-H2S, for sure. That is the flagship, that's got the stacked sensor, there's got a lot of stuff. So an X-Pro4, the way I described it, has to be around $2,000, not much more than that. In that case, it's going to be a very compelling option for a lot of photographers, including myself. I would buy it in a heartbeat. A camera like the one that I described for $2,000, I would buy it in a heartbeat, because nowadays Fujifilm autofocus has catched up a lot. I still have to update my cameras to the latest firmware that was launched, the 20th of September. I'm gonna do it, but we already have something that is really good, and so there's no reason to look for other solutions, at least we're looking at the bodies. For the lenses, I'm gonna push another video because I'm kind of pissed at Fuji for the lenses, but it's another video. Let me know in the comments below if you think I'm completely crazy, if this camera, the way I described it, is gonna entice you, if you like my ideas. Let me know. I want to keep this conversation open because I want to hear from you what you want from an X-Pro4. That's it for today again. Bye, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao, ciao. Oh, before I leave you, one thing that I forgot. I would love to see the X-Pro4 launched together in kit with a new version of the 80mm f2. That would be a dream for me, because that lens, I had it 3 times probably. I sold it 3 times, and every time I sold it, I regret selling it. So please, Fuji, renew that lens and put it in kit with the X-Pro4. I would buy it in a heartbeat.